If you've been watching this channel in the last few months, you've noticed I've been doing deep dives on how Bootstrap founders go from 0 to 250K in annual revenue. And this video is a deep dive, but it's not a deep dive on how someone went from 0 to 250K in annual revenue. It's a deep dive on my own creator business in 2024. And if you're wondering, I am very well far off away from 250K in annual revenue with this creator business. But I still think there's a lot of interesting experiments and tidbits that you might find interesting, especially since I've been pivoting away from what people would maybe call my most successful video, the one that has over 120,000 views on this channel. And I want to get into all of that, but let's dive a little bit deeper into what I've been learning through this creator journey. So this year, I actually made the decision to input all the different data points that I have for this business into specifically around the content into a Google Sheet. And I manually update this every Monday morning. And it just me kind of updating with like numbers of follower counts, the website data, the YouTube data, the newsletter data. And I just manually input everything. Is it perfect? No, but it gives me a pretty good snapshot of like what's working, what's not, like what are there any trends in this. And it's been a really nice check-in for me to do this. And yes, it's manual, but again, it gives me like a 5-minute like reflection, and it kind of forces me to do that. And I think in a really nice way. Now, from this data, what I did is actually kind of build this specific graph. And you might be thinking, okay, like this seems really lame. Like there's no growth here. They're just kind of like stable throughout every year. Like yes, LinkedIn has gone from like 3,800 and now it's up to like 4,200, and YouTube was at 26 at the beginning of the year and now it's up to 34. Like, yeah, it's growth, but it's kind of like, like whatever. And this newsletter one is being like, hey, it's at, it's kind of like whatever. But let's separate out the newsletter one. And this is the one I'm pretty happy about, and the one that which I've been focused on. So newsletter for me, it's beginning in June, ever since I pivoted away from like just doing innovation content in general and pivoting into these more deep dives on how Bootstrap founders went from 0 to 250K in annual revenue. The newsletter has been my primary focus. Like, yes, YouTube is a giant focus for me, but the newsletter growth has been my primary focus. So if you're not on the newsletter yet, I highly recommend it. You can check it out in the description below. Okay. So you can see like, here's the start of when I did pivot away from like general innovation content or like no code tools, things like that, and doing more of the deep dives. And you can see the newsletter started growing. And there's a few different reasons why it started growing. One, like I was getting more people from YouTube to the newsletter, and additionally from LinkedIn, but also the creator network within Kit, where I host my newsletter, also kicked in as well. And I think a big reason why like this actually started taking off a little bit is because my messaging specifically has been tighter, much tighter than it's ever been. And I think that's kind of a big reason why it's been really picking up. And I think I'm actually setting myself up for 2025 or some pretty significant growth, I think, for the newsletter. And I think it's mostly the messaging and really knowing like, here's my foundation of content that I really want to build. Okay, so that's the newsletter. Let's talk a little bit about YouTube specifically. So YouTube specifically, right here is my 2024 numbers. They're not great. You can see they're down, like views, watch time, subscribers, like this overall growth is down compared to 2023. Revenue is up, but take this with a grain of salt because all of 2023 actually wasn't fully, monetized for that time. I was only monetized, I think, from like July. So like this number naturally is going to be up just because you have a greater time span in 2024. So overall, right, if you looked at this, you're like, like not such a great year. But I actually think it's okay. And a big reason why is because I've been pivoting away from this specific video. In this video, you'd be like, okay, like why don't you just like double down? Like it worked, obviously. You got 120,000 views, almost 10,000 watch times, and that's all great. And it's a big reason why I've been able to monetize this channel is because of this video alone. But as you can see, right, this video has really plateaued this year. I think it's got like 1,000 views within the last like few months. Like it's really gone downhill, and that's perfectly okay. I am perfectly okay with that, especially because this video now is about 2 years old, and the tools I did review in this video, so like Adalo, Flutterflow, and Glide, like they've changed quite a bit. And so the information I shared in this video is probably pretty outdated. There's probably still some truth to it, but it's definitely not the same. But before I actually shifted into these deep dives, I actually recreated this particular video and updated it for this year. And so here's the data on that video. So it has about 13,000 views and about 1,000, watch time. That's solid. That's a really good video for me on this channel, especially as a smaller creator. but it's nowhere near where this one was. And there's probably a few different reasons why. I think the main one is that this space for no code tools has just gotten way more competitive. Like I think this video in terms of production quality, in terms of thumbnail design is actually much better than the old one. But just because there's more competition in the space and my channel has been pivoting away from it, like I think this all makes sense to me. But neither of these videos is actually what I would call my most successful video, especially in terms of revenue. My most successful video in terms of revenue this year has actually been this one. And this is the video on Mighty Networks and Circle. And that's because most of my revenue hasn't come from YouTube AdSense, as you can tell here. It's actually been coming from affiliate links. So I have an affiliate link for Circle and for Mighty Networks. And for Circle, as you can see at the very bottom there, I've made over $13,000 in revenue just for Circle, and I've gotten about 20% of that revenue. So it's about $2,500 in revenue just from Circle. So this video alone, right, it's $2,500. And if I compare it to these ones, right, it's like, it doesn't, like these two don't hold a flame to it. It's a pretty big difference. So if you're looking at numbers about YouTube AdSense and, things like that, like that's not where necessarily the money is, especially for YouTube. It's more in affiliates and brand deals and things like that, because there's a ton of value in being able to, for people watching your content. And if you can sell things through content, like you can tell, obviously the revenues are much higher. But I still don't think this is my most successful video. And I don't think this is the future of my channel whatsoever. I actually think it's more like this. And this data is actually already outdated, but this is one of my most recent videos on how Ali Grummert has built her business. And these green arrows are the things that I care about the most specifically on YouTube. Like these 2 out of 10s, 1 out of 10s. That shows me like there's actually genuine interest in this new deep dive content and that I'm getting better and better and better at these deep dives. So yes, like, right, this overarching data about like, in the past year or two, right, that's all, it looks down and it doesn't look great. But the right now, like, that's not the numbers I'm watching. These are the numbers I'm really looking at, is like the latest videos, like, are they trending upward? Is that generally this business, this creator business trending upward? And I think between seeing these green arrows and seeing these newsletter data points, right, like seeing this really shows me like you all have interest in these deep dives, and I'm also getting better as a creator. So I think this really sets me up for, I think, a really, really, big 2025 is what I'm hoping for. I think the foundation is really set up to do things in a really big way. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking for 2025. I'm going to get goals in a second, but here's some of the strategies I'm really thinking about. And number one is building a great lead magnet. And this lead magnet, I am so excited to share this thing out. I'm not going to share this right now. I want this to be a little bit of a suspense, but I am super excited about it. I'm hoping for January, February of next year to have it ready to go. And it's something that I think is going to be a huge resource for everyone, and a lot more data points and a lot more of how Bootstrap founders are going from 0 to 250K in annual revenue. And I think between this great lead magnet being helpful for getting people from YouTube or Instagram, wherever people are coming from, into the newsletter, that's going to be a big deal. But also, right, it's going to help me build more of an evergreen content library, because I don't want to be posting all new content all the time, especially on places like LinkedIn, where you have more of the ability to kind of do more evergreen content and more like repeat content in a way. If you've seen for other creators, right, they might tweak content, but you can kind of recycle content, and especially on different platforms. YouTube, I don't think you can do that as well with, but like platforms like maybe like Threads, Twitter, on LinkedIn, more of the text style content like places, you can do that with. The other piece, right, is if I have this really great lead magnet, it's going to give me something I can interview about and really, get into different podcasts and collaborate much easier with other creators. And that's a really big deal for growth, as you probably have seen throughout the deep dives if you've seen them. And that leads me to strategy number 2, which I'm be thinking really hard about. And this is actually something that I learned from Brian Harris as part of him talking about this in the Growth in Reverse community. And it's this concept of borrowing audiences. So essentially, right, there's algorithms, there's all the different ways of building an audience, but really the best way and to do this is actually just kind of working and collaborating with other creators and kind of like doing this concept of borrowing audiences. So that's why I like doing other, being on other creators' podcasts, being part of other YouTube's things, doing newsletter swaps, like working with other creators is a really big priority to me, especially going into 2025. And it's why it's like this lead magnet and being something I can interview about is a really big deal for me. So that's what I'm thinking about, is doing more borrowing audiences, and then like any algorithm growth, like anything like that just a cherry on top. That feels like that's the bonus, not the that's not the, the entree. The third strategy that I have a question mark around it is something that like I want to do really bad. I think is doing live events with these, founders and getting people in the same room and really helping people. But There's a lot more logistics to it. There's a lot more revenue needed. There's a lot more cost to come with events, but if we can hit some of the goals, I think events are on the table, and I would really love to do that, especially and get this community that wants to build bootstrap companies. Can we get it going through publicly and in person? That'd be so much better than just here on YouTube or the newsletter, wherever you might be seeing this information. So, goals for 2025. My goal is to get YouTube and the newsletter to 10,000 subscribers in both places. So YouTube, 10,000 subscribers, and the newsletter, 10,000 subscribers. And that's a lofty goal. But as I've learned through kind of this, through these deep dives and also learning through like kind of seeing my own growth numbers, I don't think it's out of the realm, especially if I'm really being really strategic with borrowing audiences and being on other places. And if this lead magnet, hopefully it can live up to the hype a little bit. Hopefully that'll help me get through there as well. Number 2 is pretty simple. It's just like continuing these deep dives and getting better at them. Keep improving them each time I post, but do them every other week. I've learned that trying to do the one every week, eventually you're all going to hate them because the quality would just be awful. I'd be burnt out. So doing one every other week has seemed like a really good pace for me, and actually keeps the quality really good and make sure I don't burn out, because none of you want to see that. And number 3 is the first time I'm going to put a revenue goal on something as a creator. And that is to get to $20,000 in revenue and do it through non-services. I don't want to be doing services. This is a big reason why I started being a creator, is I don't want to be selling my time. That's my big focus. I'm happy to like lead community, do events, but that feels a lot different than like, hey, I'm going to do consulting or freelancing. Like that's what I don't want to do. So the goal is, as a creator, whether that's through products, whether that's through a community, the goal is to do $20,000 in annual revenue and get me on that pace to 250K in annual revenue. So that's my deep dive on 2024 and a little sneak peek of 2025. If you found this video helpful, I would love it if you can give it a like. And if you're looking for more deep dives like this, you can check out the newsletter in the description below.